The World Cup is just 8 days away. And as every day goes by, every hour passes, every minute ticks, there's more and more things to talk about in the build up. And of course, we're going to be here to provide all of the talking points and talk about all those things and have all the content. And one of those things we actually wanted to touch on right now were tournament odds, because the tournament odds have been announced for the World Cup just about a week out here. And of course, the United States are leading the way. So if you are someone who is interested in betting odds, you, I think, have some work cut out for you here, because it's a little bit different, I think, depending on who you ask a little bit too.
Yeah.
There's a differencing in opinion here. So I think out of, just general present day form, respect, and history, United States are leading the odds in this one. And right behind them, not too far behind, is England, followed by Spain, Germany, France, Australia, Sweden, the Netherlands, Canada, and Brazil. Last in odds at 2,500. So I think there's going to be a lot of I'll just say it. I think if you are a betting kind, there's going to be a lot of losers in this World Cup. But God bless you if you've got it to
Yeah.
throw away.
I think we could almost learn from the Men's World Cup about all the upsets and everything that can happen, but people love to bet on this stuff. I've got to be really honest. I'm still learning like the odds and kind of what it means, but we've thrown up a graphic here for everyone joining us live on YouTube. The United States is plus 225 and it goes down for the tournament winner odds on our graphic: England, Spain, Germany, France, Australia, Sweden, Netherlands, Canada, all the way to Brazil at plus 2,500 is Brazil. And to me, that's the one that stands out the most on this. When you look at Brazil and how far they've dropped, they're tied with Canada at plus 25 points in these betting odds right now. And I think Brazil's going to do much better than that. I think that I'm giving my betting advice for those that want to take it. Please take it with a grain of salt. I would bet on Brazil. I think they're going to do much better than these odds suggest. You've got really good odds for them going plus 2,500, at least like to continue to make it out of their group stage and to go on a run. Because when you look at kind of where these other teams have fallen, yeah, the United States at plus 225, of course, they're the favorites, but they're not the like majority favorites heading into this one. Although they are number one ranked, they are two-time champions. Of course, you would expect them to be the favorites, but it's not blowing other nations out of the water. And I think that's very fair because I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk for the United States. I don't think it's going to be easy for them to A, get out of their group stage, B, make it through the round of 16, and C, make it all the way to the final, let alone win the final and come home with a win. It's going to be a very difficult uphill battle for the Americans. And then a couple of these other nations have recently dealt with some injuries and dealt with injuries over the last several months or the last several days that to me have knocked them down in points in terms of how well they're going to do. England being plus 450 at number 2 to win this, according to these FIFA World Cup betting odds. I think that's pretty good to have England up top, Spain, Germany, France. They're definitely my top teams, but to me, Brazil deserves to be much higher with these odds.
I'm with you 100%. Look, I don't know what comes into play when the folks who decide these things and create these odds kind of come up with them. I mean, it's a similar question that people always ask around the official FIFA rankings when they drop. And usually they drop an entire list. It goes from one all the way through number XXZZZ. It's a very, very long list. And a lot of folks get fixated on the top 10. And they, of course, announced just ahead of the World Cup a final official ranking of all of the teams going into this World Cup from one all the way down to, I believe it is 188 or so. There's a lot of teams, but obviously not all of those teams being represented at the World Cup because there's only 32 participating nations. But with that, in terms of the top 32 folks getting a final look at the top 10 going into this tournament. And there wasn't a lot of change around that official FIFA ranking going into this tournament. It was still USA, followed by Germany. They've been 1 and 2 for years, moving towards these within these FIFA rankings. So USA number 1, Germany number 2, Sweden number 3, England number 4, France at number 5, Spain at number 6, Canada at number 7, Brazil at number 8, followed by Netherlands at number 9, and Australia closing out the official top 10 rankings. And even within those rankings, Lisa, I was like, I got a problem with that. Just like when we saw these odds, I thought Brazil was ranked too low, just in terms of current form going into this. I think you even make an argument for England and their form over the last
Yep.
18 or so. So, of course, I took those official FIFA rankings and I created a power rankings of my own. And I absolutely juggled and moved teams around as well. I lifted up England a bit in that, and I also lifted up Brazil within the power rankings as well. So I just was like, let's see how this works out going into the World Cup. I know there's going to be a lot of focus on those top 10 teams. I know for me, I believe any of them can get the better of the other on any given day. I think it'll present a very interesting scenario in the knockout rounds
Yeah.
get involved and come into play. And I might shift those around as the World Cup goes
Oh,
on
for sure.
and see how that goes. But that's part of the fun. But I'm with you. I think within any of these kind of listicles that we see, whether they're World Cup odds or official FIFA rankings, you take a look at maybe the current form and the buildup, or maybe even some of the losses that some of these teams have sustained in the buildup to this tournament, and kind of rearrange those rankings, even if you just do it in your head. I think even looking at the official FIFA rankings, Germany ranked at number 2, but knowing that they've got
No.
some injuries that they've dealt with leading up to this tournament, and knowing that they've had some questionable performances in these final 2 friendlies and send-offs that they've had, and England as well dealing with their own set of injuries. I don't think there's a team that you can go through any of the official FIFA rankings and not point out some players who are either some teams that are either affected by injury or have players making a return.
Yeah, I agree completely. There's a lot of different factors that come into play, and if you're not reading Sandra's work on CBSSports.com yet, please go read it. She's got power rankings, she's got breakdowns of teams, she's got anything and everything you could imagine and want to hear about. She writes all about it. That's all she does. She's just sitting over there writing, and we're so grateful for it. Thank God. But you're exactly right, Bud, because there's a lot of different factors that are going to come into play. I think the first opening 3 days of this World Cup are going to be really telling, right? You mentioned it, Australia and Ireland starting things off. The US plays on the second day. That's when we're going to get our first actual taste of what's happening. A lot of these nations have played quote unquote send off games or final friendlies before they head to the World Cup. And there's been some very interesting results. There's been very interesting results is what has come from these when you look at Germany and Zambia, or whether it was Ireland and France and England that played. Those are good games to watch. But as we go through the group stages, power rankings are going to change and odds are going to change. And favorites, frankly, for me, for you, for the world, are all going to change, especially throughout those first 4 days of play.
Yeah, I think hopefully, knock on wood, we won't get more news to report about regarding injuries. I would love for everyone to just sort of enter this tournament as healthy as they can. But that doesn't mean that there's not a bit of news to touch on before we close out this episode. So let's chat a little bit about it. We touched on, or I just mentioned some of the injuries that have affected some teams going into this World Cup. Germany specifically, Carolyn Simon suffering a ACL injury, will not participate in this upcoming World Cup for Germany. Huge blow. Big marquee kind of name player for this German side ahead of this World Cup. We've also got another bit of news as well. This, of course, it wouldn't be a live show if we didn't see and react to some news live. Thanks for the love, Kathleen, on the written work. Appreciate you as always. Zambia making an announcement that unfortunately their goalkeeper Hazel Nali has also sustained an ACL injury and will not participate in this upcoming World Cup. And it's interesting that we had to kind of close out the episode with this, because we're talking about players who are going to represent NWSL teams that we haven't had a chance to take a look at. And Amandine Henry is one of these players who recently signed a contract with Angel City FC and was going to this World Cup with France. I mean, the final roster was named with her on it, and we're talking just days, saying that she actually won't be able to participate in this upcoming World Cup, more due to a muscular issue. It is a calf injury that unfortunately is going to keep her out of the World Cup. So
this one is so sad. And I saw people in our chat while we were talking about NWSL players that being like, hey, why aren't you talking about Henry? Why aren't you talking about Henry? Because sadly, like, you can't watch her play in the World Cup, and it's breaking my heart. Honestly, all these injuries are. It's been a horrible plague that has been happening, whether it's the number of ACLs, as you just mentioned, 2 of them, and Simon and Niall, but now with Amandine Henry not being there, as you mentioned, it is muscular with that calf injury for France that happening just recently as France played against Ireland in a closeout game for them. Massive, right? To not be able to have Henry going to the World Cup, and also tough for Angel City, right? Like, you have to look at long term as well, hopefully, but not going to the World Cup for Henry, it'll give her a chance to continue to rehab, get better, strengthen that muscular issue before heading over to Los Angeles to play in the NWSL.
I think knowing that it's not an ACL injury, I think maybe there's some hope there for Angel City fans, or even fans of the France national team, to want to see this player continue on and get an opportunity to compete in general this year. So maybe that is going to happen with Angel City. There was a point where I had some questions around the signing, and I thought, if Henry goes on to this World Cup, competes, maybe France makes a deep run, who knows if they even go and win it all. That's a lot to ask of a player, to come back and immediately impact your club team after they go through such a grueling, grinding kind of a tournament. So how much of an impact would she be able to play in this season specifically? There was something about the timeline for me, but now you add this into the mix, and there's some even more question marks around it as well. So definitely wanted to touch on that. We also want to shout out a signing for Gotham FC, because this also is an international signing as well. They added a midfielder to their roster in Maitane Lopez. She's going to join them for the next 2 years, and we'll get a chance to get to see her play with the squad. She was asked about that, in terms of being one of those players in the mix, and was there a possibility where she was going to get named to Spain's roster. Unfortunately, fell just short of cracking that roster, and she's trying to utilize this as a bit of an opportunity. She said, you know what, I'm looking at it as a bit of a blessing, because I'm going to get to play in the United States in one of the best leagues in the world, and get a chance to work on my game in other facets of it as well. So excited to see what she can bring in NWSL. But in terms of news that isn't directly tied to either signings or unfortunate injuries, something that we wanted to touch on was VAR in this one. We're going to get a little bit of a show in the World Cup, because referees will explain VAR in real time to crowds in the stadium. A first time.
Massive. I'm picturing like NFL style, right? Like that's what we can maybe expect going forward. I think this will be really helpful, frankly, to the people in the stadium, although they'll also be doing it. So it'll be real time from the referees in stadium and to the broadcast at home. However, the people usually watching the broadcast at home, they often get a little bit insight from the commentators and the pundits talking about the game, because they get insight from the red hat on the field saying, hey, this is why the VAR was called. And also on the broadcast, you get to see exactly what the VAR is looking at. And the broadcasters usually do a fantastic job of telling you where to look, pointing out what's happening, why it's a call, why it shouldn't be a call, breaking it down for you, so that the viewers at home usually have insight into what's happening. However, if you're watching a game live in stadium, all you know is that the referee has gone to VAR to look at it, and usually they put up on the jumbotron, hey, like VAR review, and then whatever the call is, whether it's a goal, no goal, if it's a PK, no PK, whatever it may be, a card, no card, that's all you know just from watching it. But you don't know why. You don't know what they're looking at, if it happens to be offside or a foul, or just reviewing a goal, whether it's a goal or no goal, or if it's something that happened previously in the play as the play developed. For those that have been watching the NWSL, you've seen a lot of different calls like that, because NWSL is the first women's professional league to incorporate VAR this year, and there's been a lot of hiccups as they've gotten through it, but the officials have gotten better at it. The broadcasters have gotten better at understanding what's happening, and so now the people at home have been able to do that. But when you're in a stadium, you don't know what's happening. So this is massive for the tournament as a whole. I mean, FIFA is like taking slow steps and building steps up to make this better for everyone, whether it's the nations, the players, the fans, the officials, the coaching staff, the people talking about it as well. I like this. I like that they're doing this. Sandra, what do you think?
Look, I'm here for it. I think there's a general concern around it, in that VAR is something that already takes time away from the game. So how will this also play a role? And so I think there's some concerns, and there's a little bit of worry about that. It brings up a little bit of similar energy, like deja vu as well for me, because I know when they rolled out VAR, it was during that Women's World Cup, and then it was the first time that they kind of utilized it, and there was still some questions around that, and getting the timing right done around those calls. So I'm trying to lean more into the glass is half full versus it's half empty. I think it's going to actually provide a little bit of a more entertaining factor into this game. I think folks, the more they're informed, the better of a viewing experience it is. So maybe there's going to be some frustrating moments for, not just the players and coaching staffs, but also the officiating as well, as they got to kind of get into a routine of things. But I think overall, the more information, the better.
Yeah, completely. It's going to just provide more clarity for the fans that are in Australia and New Zealand watching this. But I can't help but think back to the Men's World Cup in last November and the stoppage time that came into play. We're going to have to see how this rolls out. For those that don't remember, didn't get to watch much of the Men's World Cup, there was like 10, 12 minutes of stoppage time added on for like a majority of the games. I remember after the first 2 days, it was like there have been 45 extra minutes of soccer played due to the stoppage time. It was incredible. It was incredibly lengthy, and when they were playing in Qatar, it was so hot. It was extra minutes and load management for these players. It became like a trickle down effect as to everything that was happening. So we'll see kind of how this World Cup shakes out and what happens in terms of VAR, extra time, and stoppage time that comes into play at the end of the games.
It's so funny to hear you chat about that, because I think we've seen a little bit of that kind of chaos in NWSL. Like, this is the first regular season that NWSL has started to utilize VAR, and there have been some moments where the stoppage time has been excessive at the end of games, whether it's been 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes, really, really early on in that first half of the regular season. But like with most things, time has helped, and I think there's been a little bit of a better routine when it comes to going to VAR and utilizing those things moving forward. So I'm excited to see how it looks in a World Cup. I know we're amped about it. I hope everyone else is amped about it as well. We're going to keep all of the good World Cup content rolling out for y'all, but that is a wrap for us today.